Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Vibes. I'd love to welcome here D. Paul Fleming. Now, I'm going to get into a little bit of what he does. So he is a disabled vet, a Native American holy man, and a medium, but from what I understand, a lot more. So we're going to get to know him and have a great conversation. Mr. Fleming, tell us a little bit more about you.
What's going on, Kyle? How are you?
Wonderful.
Thanks for having me on your show. I'm grateful.
Of course.
So if you've got 2 hours, I'll that'll be enough time to touch the iceberg of what I am and who I am. But I kind of shy away from self publicity, if you will. But I do a lot of work with the spirit world. I have a lot of gifts from Creator. And I try not to. I try to be very mindful not to abuse or allow my ego to get in the way. So I try to promote myself without really promoting myself, if you will. But the thing that I enjoy most about my life is my almost 40 years with my wife, my time in the military, and my closeness with my Native American heritage and abilities, if you will.
Well, how far back does this go that you knew that you could do all these things?
I've been pissing off people since I could talk. So, what's that? 100, 105, 106 years now. Now my whole life I've felt out of place, and I see stuff, and my dreams would become real. And what I mean by real is I would dream something that would happen the next day. All kinds of wild stuff. But the thing that always stood out is my ability to see what people say. So when people talk, I get these little bubbles that pop up, and I can see what they're saying, and sense what it is they're trying to tell me, or what they were talking about, and what that is trying to say to them. But it also can really rub people the wrong way, because when they say things that are just untrue, it's easily and quickly clear to me. And more times than not, my voice gets ahead of my mouth, which is always 2 steps behind my brain. And I say things that, they're out of my mouth. And I know that spirit said it, but I'm left holding the bag, right? Let me give you an example, Kyle. 30 years ago, my wife and I were at a bar doing what reasonably young people do, right? Have a night out. We're in this packed hometown bar, and this woman I've never seen before brushes up against my arm. And as I look over to her from touching me, comes out of my mouth was, "Oh, you have cancer." Right? As soon as it's out of my mouth, I'm like, "Oh, Lord." Right? Well, this poor girl is looking at me like a deer in the headlights. And her 9', 11" tall boyfriend, who is no more than a cat's whisker behind her, sees her face and looks at me like, I said something that was going to send her into a tizzy. And he looks down at me and breathes heavy. And, she says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." And she looks at me and she goes, "How'd you know?" And I just kind of shook my head. And then she said, I just found out this morning. I haven't told anybody. Right. So that's what happens to me, especially when people touch me or I get too close to people. I can pick up on things that, for the most part, they don't want others to know. Now that girl came and tracked down my wife, tried to spend all kinds of time with her and get to me, but I didn't want to get into it, but apparently spirit wanted to pass her a message and do it openly. And they used me as the vehicle. And that's what happens to me daily. Doesn't matter where I go or what I do. It is a fist fight to try and keep my unfiltered mouth shut. Good thing you invited me on.
I was going to say, nowadays, people with abilities, or people who say they have abilities, all they want to do is profit off of people, but you just want to help people.
Yeah, I've never made a dime. I've cleared houses, I clear people, I clear things. I do all kinds of stuff. I've never asked for nor taken a dime. And I don't know that I ever will. You never want to say never, right? With some exceptions. I believe in the baby Jesus, and I'm praying I never change that theory. But I don't ask for money. I don't take it. I don't accept it. If folks want to make a donation, there's a ton of veterans groups I work with. I would love a donation. You know, if you want to buy me dinner, great. You know, big steak. You know, I'll clear the demons from your house. You buy me a 2-inch steak, right? It's a fair trade.
Right. Now, can you talk about maybe the most dangerous situation that you've had to deal with as far as spirits, or should I say demons, that kind of thing?
Yeah. The most dangerous thing I've bumped into is the living. Okay.
Yeah.
The living body without the blessings of Great Spirit or the baby Jesus, if they don't have that inside of them, the living is unquestionably the most dangerous creature I've ever bumped into. And when a creature, living like that, has something manifested inside of them, you know, I like to call them tricksters, or a low level demon is kind of a polite way of describing some of the things that I've been up against. But I've been tricked. I've been fooled into thinking that the entity is not evil, and I can feel all all kinds of stuff, but I have a hard time feeling darkness. It's wild. My wife can feel it, and she'll turn around and beat feet. She can only take so much of it, but it doesn't bother me. It doesn't cause me fear or panic. I actually step towards it, and my advisors have always been cautious with me about being careful I don't, touch the darkness. Baby Jesus is busy, right? He doesn't need to come save my dumbass. So, some of the things that I would say the tricksters are probably the toughest. They present themselves a lot of times with a big old, early 1900s, late 1800s hat, and they're dressed up in a tuxedo like suit, and they just try to trick you into thinking that there's something they're not. So you got to be careful. That's where I mentioned something about a kid in a wheelchair. I can't feel it, but I can see through it, and it's telling me, man, no, it's not what it appears to be. So the toughest things that I've dealt with are things that it doesn't appear to be, because your natural reaction when you see somebody in distress is to help them, right?
Right.
So you're trying to help them, and when you do that, you open yourself up. When you open yourself up, that's when darkness wants to slide in, okay? Or stick a cord on you, like shooting an arrow and letting it stick into you. And they got you. They got you on a cord, a tether. So they don't need to bother you now. They will just bother you over time, right? So that's why it's important for anybody for everybody to understand that they need to break those cords. They need to break those connections. As I say, daily, Great Spirit, break all unwanted, unneeded, unnecessary cords or connections so that I am free and clear to be a positive white light force in this universe.
And for you folks who don't know, we had actually talked about a spirit that had attached to me. That was the reference to the kid in the wheelchair. But, you mentioned you're a Christian, but you've also, you've gotten some education training from a Native American shaman.
Actually, a number of them. Granddaughter Crow, Dr. Joy Gray, spent most of her younger life in the corporate world as a highly educated woman in the conference room, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's gone back to her Native American roots. I shouldn't say she left them, but she over time refocused her intent in life, and she's a great wealth of information. One of her recent books is Shamanism and Your Shadow. This is an extremely educational book for me, because it helps me refine and hone my skills and my gifts. There's others, I've Chief Fool's Crow of the Sioux Nation. He's passed now, but he was a phenomenal healer right up to the age of 99. If you ever want to read a great book on him, it's Chief Fool's Crow. So it was published in the 70s. He died in the early 90s.
Are you Is your heritage Sioux Indian?
I'm from the Pawnee Reservation.
Oh,
My
Pawnee.
grandfather, my grandfather jumped the reservation and joined the Navy in the mid 30s, and he jumped the reservation from Oklahoma.
Oh,
His
wow.
mother jumped the reservation, went back to the ancestral grounds in the North Platte River, um, and gave birth to my grandfather. And then they were found out and packed up and driven back to the reservation in Oklahoma. And that is in part where, in his life, he went to the boarding schools, all that horseshit, and then his mother encouraged him to jump ship and claim your white, join the Navy, and he did right before World War II. Rode submarines, did a bunch of war patrols in the Pacific, and then went up to Wisconsin and launched new submarine crews until he retired as a lieutenant commander in 1965.
Do you have some books?
I do. My most recent book, Mysteries of the Wyndham Inn. If you like some of the stuff we're talking about, you're going to love this. This is based on true stories of the people that lived at the Wyndham Inn over the course of many. Well, I shouldn't say they lived over many lifetimes, but the people that I know that used to live there told me a lot of these stories, and I couldn't get away from this chirping to write the book. Well, of course, I want to put the stuff I like into the book. So you've got, the chunks of truth, right? And then you've got the stuff that I kind of take my literary license and have some fun with, which of course is all tied to the paranormal and the Native American way. And of course, the baby Jesus, so when you put all that together, mix it in a pot, you got a witch's brew of mysteries at the Wyndham Inn. Book 1 is out October 1st. Book 2 will be out in November. And the people that did the pre-release reads are already saying, man, we got to know. So when's the book 3, which is titled The Hanging of Miss Elizabeth, which is, the whole thing is based on a true story where this woman in the mid 1700s, young girl, was hanged for what they said was abandoning her child in the woods and so on and so on. But it's got nothing to do with it. As the overview shows, a couple hundred years ago, this woman was hanged twice. And her father was in musket shot with the governor's pardon when the noose on the second hanging finally stopped twitching, So as long as I can remember, and I don't live that far from that place, from that building, but as long as I can remember, I've heard thousands of stories of people saying, the ghost of Miss Elizabeth is on the street corner in the center of in Wyndham Village, where people see her on the streets, and how many times the paramedics and the fire department has been called to the Wyndham Inn for scratching in the chimney and noises in the walls and so on. One of my recent photographs I took, you can see 10 faces or more in this one picture that I shot with the window. If you really want to have some fun taking pictures, get those digital cameras, and the higher the quality, the better. And just snap pictures of the windows, right, or mirrors, and you'll find a lot of wild stuff in there. But for me, it's a lot more interesting because I before I snap pictures, I tend to call the spirits in. Come on, guys, it's time for some photographs. Make yourself known. Kind of wild.
Well, we're just
Great
about
book.
out of time, but and I wished I could have emphasized a little bit more on this. You also help veterans.
Yeah. I've been a veteran advocate and supporter my entire life. As a disabled veteran, I learned the hard way how the system at the VA works. And, so my first suicide was a couple of years after I was out of the service. A friend of mine called up, and it's kind of a long story, but he wanted to talk. And I said, great, next week. And, called him back, and he'd already killed himself. So I put a lot of attention and time into trying to help all veterans, especially with the suicide rate being north of 50 a day. So I wrote a book that kind of lets people understand why veterans are, killing themselves at record pace.
Well, if someone wants to get a hold of you or to get your book, do you have a website?
Yeah, the best place is to hit me up on Facebook at D Paul or D Paul Fleming on Facebook. Follow me on that, or you can send me an email at dpaul@blackhawkbooks.com. I'm on Amazon for the books. I'm an independent published author, so I would give out my phone number, but too many people call, and I don't always know where that damn phone is, because I tend to forget about it every now and again. But yeah, you can hit me up on Facebook or send me an email. Happy to help. And if you got anything you think is in line where you've got poltergeists, or you need a clearing, or you need to figure out balance, one of the best things I do as a Native American holy man is I help people find their balance. I help them see where they're out of line so that they can, take control of their lives and their spiritual self and keep moving forward.
Well, to make it easier on everybody, I will put your links in the description. But Mr. Fleming, thank you so much for coming on the show, brother.
Hey, it's an absolute blast being on with you. You got to have me on more.
Hey, we'll have you back, because I'm sure we can have some other conversations about some of your investigations.
Spooky.
But again, thank you. And I want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button. For my regulars, you guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. Until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless, and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network